So now I would like to introduce our MER Scholars Fund lectureship speaker, Dr. Arlene Farren. And Arlene happens to be the current president of the MER Scholars Fund Board. So she will give us greetings from the fund board also. And she's going to give us some information about the Scholars Fund. There's always some confusion about what's the difference between SRS and the MER Scholars Fund. So she can talk a little bit about that. Then she'll move into her lecture titled Wonders and Wanderings, Exploring Roger's Science. And Dr. Farren's bio is in guidebook, so I invite you to review it. But I do want to acknowledge her many, many years of dedicated commitment to the Society of Rogerian Scholars. Besides being president of the fund board right now, she also chairs the awards committee, and she's been a long-standing leader, serving 2 terms as president, many years as conference chair or on the conference planning committee. We all appreciate her creativity and her organizational skills and other things, but we often hear people say when we're working on the conference, and Arlene hasn't been on this particular conference planning committee, but it's like, let's ask Arlene. She always comes up with wonderful conference titles, and we always appreciate her input. Mm-hmm. We are fortunate to have her share her deep understanding of Rogerian science, and so I invite us to wander and wonder with her this afternoon. And after her lecture, there'll be time for dialogue together. So thank you, Arlene, for your commitment. And I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to share my slides. All right. So good afternoon and welcome. I'm so happy to be here with you all at this SRS voyage through the pan-dimensional universe of the science of unitary human beings. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as a true educator, let me advance my slide there. You see here the objectives that I have. So Rogers and other Rogerian scholars have written extensively on the science of unitary human beings for almost 50 years. The wonders of the science can be seen in the essential concepts, the theories, and the work of nurse scientists, researchers, practitioners, and theorists who have worked to advance the science for human betterment. These activities really reflect lifetimes of work. Today, we will take a journey through space-time, making a few stops along the way to discuss some of the wonders of the science and to wander through the research to appreciate its possibilities. As Marlene mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about the fund towards the end, okay? Wondering. So it may be questioning on all like experiences, the wonders of something. In this case, it is both the wonder, the vision and awesomeness of Roger's science of unitary human beings, together with wondering, questioning, what have we learned? Are there empirical supports? Are there refutations? What has the empirical findings taught us? Do we make adjustments? Do we need more research or additional theories? We may not get to awareness of all of these questions, but wondering in both senses can help us in our journey towards nursing science knowledge and its development. Our wondering is facilitated by wandering, taking a journey through the science, through the empirical literature, to see what is there, and also to wander into the future and wonder what might be helpful. So I hope we are all wanderers and wanderers. And as you will note, this quote is from the dedication in the new SRS book, Evolving Rogerian Nursing Science, John R. Phillips' unique contributions that we will just keep hearing a lot about. Dedication reads, quote, "To all those visionary seekers inspired by the brilliance of the science of unitary human beings and committed to its advancement. It seems so pertinent to wonderers and wanderers, as well as to those reading and learning from John's works." I hope it's okay with you, John, but I just want to share a little story about John. This September, John was highlighted in a hometown newspaper, The Patriot, in September 15th for his accomplishments. And the paper referred to the book as a quote unquote capstone in his professional career. So congratulations to John and the SRS Resource Committee for this gift, for sure. So, the wonder of Rogers' science. In her 1970 classic book, An Introduction to the Theoretical Basis of Nursing, Rogers put forward her lifetime of wondering, her lifetime work of contributing to professional nursing and introducing nurses to the science that has a fundamental belief in the uniqueness of all and a deep commitment to the advancing of nursing science. She published her last update on the science in 1992 in the classic article, Nursing Science and the Space Age. Rogers reiterated many times that the science was open and as such would expect to see changes, new developments, new theories, instruments, and practice approaches. As we know, the science has basic and essential concepts that guide Rogerian nursing science. These are the postulates, the principles of homeodynamics, pattern manifestations. Rogers was actually taken herself by the wonders of the world and of her science. She stated, "Human beings are on the threshold of a fantastic and imagined future," end quote. This remains all too pertinent today in our diverse and complex ways. Let's take a moment to center around the science of unitary human beings' essential comments. We'll start with the postulates, again, just to orient us. This slide represents the four postulates. Energy field, Rogers' proposed field as a unifying concept, described as a fundamental unit of the living and non-living. She asserted that we are irreducible and indivisible energy fields. Rogers was clear that there are human and environmental energy fields and noted that while they may be distinct, they are integral with each other. Phillips expanded on Rogers' postulate of energy field when he proposed that each energy field is a manifestation of the universe energy spirit, a universal, unitary phenomena of wholeness that is not bound by space-time. Energy spirit is an expansion of thinking and a synthesis of the postulates. Openness is a characteristic of energy fields. Continuously open, and Rogers stated it explains the infinite nature of energy fields. Pattern is the unique, distinguishing characteristic of field, which changes continuously. It gives identity to the field and is not observable directly. Pattern or patterning manifestations are observable. And the final postulate, pandimensionality, a way of perceiving reality, nonlinear and not limited by space or temporal boundaries. Together, the postulates focus on wholeness and change. And the principles of homeodynamics then are introduced to describe the nature of change and are considered integral with each other. There are three principles specific to the science of unitary human beings, and together they postulate the nature and complexity of field change. Although the graphic has lines between them, this is only due to limitation in finding an adequate graphic. They are present together. Resonancy refers to wave pattern frequency. These are non-directional and contributes to our understanding of the wonder of the diversity and change. Helicy suggests field change is innovative, unpredictable, and increasingly diverse. It also conveys the wonder of the dynamics and creative flow of change. And integrality, this is the mutual human environmental field process and conveys the wonder and beauty of the integral nature of the fields as they change together. Pattern manifestations assist us to knowingly appreciate human environmental field, as pattern is an abstraction. Rogers proposed that pattern reveals itself in the pattern manifestations emerging from human environmental field mutual processes. As you can see on this slide, the pattern manifestations are unique to individuals. They are nonlinear and can fluctuate and change unpredictably and continuously innovative ways, which speak to the ongoing and increasing diversity of field. Rogers included in her 1992 article, and then John wrote further about pattern manifestations in 1997. In Rogers' work, the term pattern and patterning were used. So it's also appropriate to note that Fawcett and Aligood conducted a rational hermeneutic interpretive study regarding the terms pattern and patterning, and concluded that in terms of applying and using the science of unitary human beings in practice, patterning was proposed as more suitable, as it is a verb connoting action, and patterning is considered an observable emergent. This article was in Visions in 2004. Another thing to make note of is Butcher and Melansky, 2020, noted the manifestations of field patterning was initially a science of unitary human beings theory of rhythmical correlates of change. John Phillips continues to share his ideas and thinking through his writings and presentations. He has shared his thoughts on Rogers' science, the postulates and principles and theories, which are all helpful in gaining a deeper understanding. Frankly, I thought the new book provided a great way to see the flow and read the explanations of the concepts and theoretical thinking with a sense of wholeness over time, the big picture, so to speak, which I found more enlightening than reading each separate article. So along the way, he presented new terms that he sees as advancing the frontiers of science. These are just examples of 3 terms John has advanced. I found that in his writings, he refers to them and provides a slightly different way of explaining or expanding on the ideas. There is a sharing and new ways of quote unquote seeing them and their meaning within the science. In 2010, he first mentioned energy field that I can recall in his relative present article and elaborated on the concept in future articles. He described energy spirit as involving all processes of change that were manifest beginning with the Big Bang. John has stated that in his mutual process pan-dimensional awareness with Rogers, he has found inspiration for coining and introducing these new terms and updating of concepts that are consistent with Rogers' science. Listening to his comments at the SRS September book launch event and in his writings, he expresses his appreciation of Rogers' energy spirit presence in the universe and the inspiration that he experiences. Well-becoming, Phillips introduced this term in 2013, right around that time, and well-becoming is a development, updating of well-being. He focused on the ideas of changing energy field and patterning manifestations, rhythms of life, and transcendence. John defined well-becoming as participating in one's changing pattern and its manifestations for the betterment of rhythms of living and for transcending as energy spirit. He also defined a new term, we heard Marlene mention it before, Unitariology, in 2015 in the Heretic and Heroine article, and defined it as the study of unitary phenomena revealing truth of the universe and humankind. He has identified the postulates, the homodynamic principles, the pattern manifestations, and the theories as the science's basics. So we will go here. Phillips, Rogers, Butcher, and Molansky, and others have identified some theories emerging from the science. These are just a few examples. Theory development is a dynamic process. New theories are introduced, and those already introduced evolve and change. For example, in 2016, Phillips described a new theory, pan-dimensional awareness, integral presence. He described this as a quote-unquote union of Rogers' earlier theories of accelerating change and emergence of paranormal phenomena. He suggested that expanding pan-dimensional awareness, integral presence was essential to well-becoming, and identified some patterning processes that may assist people seeking a better understanding of their own manifestations. And these processes could be meditation, visualization, storytelling, art. Like Rogers, John Phillips, and other scholars posed potential research ideas to advance the science. Rogers asserted that the science is logically and scientifically tenable, and there are unlimited research potentials. I hope this brief overview has helped us focus awareness. There are things that most of us are quite familiar with, but a brief overview of the Rogers science of unitary human beings helps us to get a sense of the basics and essentials of the science, and hopefully centers us around the essentials as we move forward in the voyage of the 2023 conference. Rogers asserted that nursing science is an organized body of abstract knowledge founded in scientific research and logical analysis, and is open and nurtured by an ongoing need for development. Wondering included wandering into the literature. A broad view is presented on the next slide. Then I'll focus on a shorter time span. A search of Sinnal using the term Rogers Science of Unitary Human Beings only was conducted mid-August and mid-September in 2023 during that time, the results remained stable. The search screen here indicates, I'm not sure if you could see it that clearly, but actually there were a total of 767 articles and that were identified as published between 1987 and 2023. That only narrowing of this particular search was the removal, which was pretty much a default request of 20 duplicates. As you may be able to see here, during that period of time, there were 94 dissertations, 538 academic journal articles, 115 in other periodicals and magazines, and 10 continuing education articles. The academic journals included Nursing Science Quarterly, Visions, and Advances in Nursing Science, accounting for 64% or 344 out of 538 articles included in this category, with Visions publishing 31% or 167 out of 538 articles. Examples of journals presented in the fourth category of periodicals surprised me a little. The publications identified here were Rogerian Nursing Science News, which was not a surprise, and there was a publication entitled Vision. There was only one citation there, not to be confused with Visions, the official journal of the Society of Rogerian Scholars, and also Beginnings, a AHNA publication. The surprise was that journals like the Scholarly Inquiry in Nursing Practice, Journal of Nursing Scholarship, and the Journal of Cardiovascular Nursing, along with Theoria, the Journal of Nursing Theory, I would have thought those would have belonged in the academic journal category, but there you have it. As one might expect, the types of articles were research reports, theory types, articles including explorations, comparisons, concept analyses, theory development, etc. Other articles included reflections, discussions, dialogues, applications, and continuing education. These articles under continuing education focused on programs or other reports that provided opportunities for continuing education units. Topics included family-centered care and critical care, case studies, aromatherapy, geriatrics, and other clinical topics such as pain and therapeutic touch. I then focused my wanderings on the science of unitary human being research within the last 10 years. And my wandering question was guided by what are the characteristics of the science of unitary human beings research reported in the literature for the years 2013 to 2023. The wandering with intention included the characteristics of the studies of Rogers' approaches and the methods used, the findings, what postulates, principles, patterning manifestations, and or theories were discussed. The search was conducted using CINAHL Complete and Medline Complete databases. The search term was just specifically Rogers' Science of Unitary Human Beings, which was then further limited to research, English language, and the dates 2013 to 2023. The literature search inclusion criteria were Rogers' Science of Unitary Human Beings had to be identified explicitly as the theoretical context. Database articles for a qualitative and mixed method studies that might begin with an a-theoretical perspective, Rogers' Science had to be included in the interpretation and or discussion section. Dissertations were excluded. So next, we'll talk about the process of identifying the studies for inclusion. 37 articles were identified from the search. You'll see the Prisma flow diagram on this slide, and I'll just provide a little further detail on the categories, etc. 2 duplicates and the dissertations were removed on that initial screening of the 37 abstracts. Further screening of the abstracts at the second level removed a total of 12 additional articles. These categories were designated, so I'll just mention those that were non-science of unitary human beings was used for works that were designated as Rogers in the major or minor subject headings in the search, but were actually misidentified or misnomers. For example, they were addressing Rogers with a D, evolutionary method, or Rogers' diffusion of innovation model or theory. The category methodology included 1 article conceptualizing narrative research from the perspective of Rogers' science and proposed a unitary narrative biological method. Interesting, but it wasn't databased, so it was removed. The concept analysis category included 1 article presenting the analysis using Chin and Kramer's approach to explore the concept human energy field. Although interesting, again, it did not meet the inclusion criteria. 2 reviews guided by the Rogers Science were removed. 3 articles were articles comparing or discussing multiple theories. 1 abstract only, so that was removed. And then there were 3 articles, I'm sorry. Oh, I know, I wanted to mention that last category there is an article that was specific to analysis and evaluation of Reed's self-transcendence theory. So additional 12 studies were removed. The remaining 18 articles were retrieved. And just as an aside, they were requested, several of them were requested via interlibrary loan, which is usually a very efficient and generally speedy retrieval. But 2 took an inordinate amount of time. and finally arrived at 4 p.m. on October 16th, which was the end date I had set for myself. So finally, they were all received. The 18 articles remaining were assessed for eligibility by reviewing the full article. The removals at this point included 4 that were, again, non-science or unitary human beings. One of those late interlibrary loaners was a medical research, and there was no evidence in the article or the abstract anywhere as to why it was listed as Roger Science. 2 were that miscategorized kind of situation where one article referred to Carl Rogers and another, again, Roger Fusion of Innovation, which was the second late retrieval. The 4th removed as non-science was, this is another nursing theory. 4 articles were specific to other theories associated within the science, but were not exclusively based within Roger's science, so they were removed. The theories that were included in those studies was Barrett's power theory, the theory of compassion energy, life perspective, rhythm theory. One article did not state a specific theoretical rationale, but did mention Rogers in the background. So on the final round of screening, 9 more articles were removed for the review, resulting in only 9 articles for inclusion. These are the 9 articles in the review. That included 4 each of quantitative and qualitative design and 1 mixed method design. I'll just mention that 2 of the qualitative design groups were focused on a proposed theory. However, each of these articles presented qualitative data upon which the practice or situation-specific theories were based. They were remained in the review. The authors of the mixed method study and one of the quantitative studies identified as either feasibility or a pilot study. And 7 of the 9 studies reviewed examined non-invasive modalities. So designs included a randomized control trial, 2 quasi-experimental designs with control group and repeated measures, and 1 correlational, 1 group design. The quantitative approach included in the mixed method was a pre-post single group design. The populations or samples were primarily adults, but just to be clear, 1 study conducted outside of the United States reported the age range as 16 to 65, which may be a little unusual for us, but the sample was identified as adults in the report. Not all studies reported age range or sex or gender of the participants. The participants in the quantitative studies included people journeying through wellness-related experiences such as aging and pregnancy, those living in the community experiencing fibromyalgia, and those choosing a surgical procedure. The experiences of interest included stress and anxiety, depression and pain, optimism, power, and well-being. The final data analysis sample sizes for these studies range from 21 to 55. In the quantitative and mixed method design, this slide shows the patterning modalities that were used. I will just share just some brief details of the procedures. So with distant Reiki, that was engaged via Zoom in the place of the participants choosing. There were 2 distant Reiki sessions, and there was a pre-post test. The guided imagery began with an in-person session with the researcher, and then the participants were sent home with a guided imagery CD for use at home. The measures were baseline, week 4, and week 8. In terms of music, this was done with the researcher and then given CD for use at home with instructions. It was a 4-week program with 4 data collection points. The CD was created by the researcher and was a mix of classical and salsa music. And then the Reiki intervention was 5 sessions that included 3 post-operative sessions and measured pre-post sessions. And finally, yoga. It was a 6-week program for healthy moms, which was a national company that provided this program. And the researchers collected data at the baseline and at the end of the program. In terms of the measures, this slide identifies the measures used in each study. 3 out of the 4 quantitative studies explored change in perceived pain. Pain was measured using a numeric rating scale. In one study, the Burn study, 0 to 10. 2 studies by the same lead author, that is Onieva Zafara, measured pain using a visual analog scale for pain and the McGill Pain Questionnaire long form Spanish version. Reliability and validity were addressed for the VAS and the McGill. In terms of this perceived depression, again, those same 2 groups, Onieva Zafra, lead author, used the same measure for depression, which was a VAS for depression, and then the Beck Depression Inventory Spanish version. Again, reliability and validity were reported. The study exploring pattern manifestation of optimism, power, and well-being used the PK-PCT version 2 for power, life orientation test revised for optimism, and well-being picture scale for well-being. The authors of the article also described the SF-12 and the 2 components that they looked at were the physical component scale and the mental component scale. And they did describe that used as only an auxiliary measure of unitary well-being. Reliability and validity were addressed. So the major findings of the quantitative studies. Each explored patterning modalities, reported generally supportive findings. Burn, which looked at pain, reported changes in pain by persons receiving unilateral total knee arthroplasty who received Reiki. Burn and colleagues concluded that Reiki was helpful in a reduction of post-operative pain. In the 2015 Onieva Zafra study, guided imagery was the field patterning modality. The researchers reported guided imagery was found to be useful in the reduction of pain and depression in persons with fibromyalgia at the 4th week. However, these findings were not sustained at the 6-week measure, reflecting the final data collection period. Reese and Aligood examined field patterning changes with the use of yoga modality and reported statistically significant increases in optimism, power, and well-being. The researchers explored if the participants were either 2nd trimester or 3rd trimester of their pregnancy, made a difference in the pattern manifestations. The findings were non-significant, suggesting that the groups experienced the same changes. Quantitative continued here. So we have the 4th quantitative study, which was done by the Onieva Zafra group. This was exploring music as a patterning modality. During the music group, and showed statistically significant improvement in pain, evidenced by the data from both the McGill and the VAS. And in the music group, statistically significant change in perceived depression were reported by the Beck Depression Inventory, but the authors reported that the VAS did not reach significance. The other study on this slide is the quantitative arm of the mixed method design, which was Di Benedetto's study, which reported the quantitative results of the mixed method as statistically significant changes between pre and post distant Reiki sessions in both perceptions of stress and perceived anxiety. The researcher also addressed some of the lessons learned from she identified it was a feasibility study, so we would expect to see what was learned. And she talked about lessons learned regarding recruitment, presentation of the Reiki education prior to the sessions, and some statistical features like sample size and a priori significance levels for the future study. The designs of qualitative studies also varied along all four of the studies included. A qualitative description with content analysis, human becoming, hermeneutic sciencing, unitary field pattern portrait method, and hermeneutic phenomenological study. The participants were persons experiencing advanced cancer and hospice care, graduate nursing students, 2 Native American women, and community dwelling adult male survivors of childhood maltreatment. Data sources included interviews registered with audio tapes, transcripts, and notes. Others used textual content for analysis and observations. Atlas TI was used in one study to assist with coding and data management, that is organizing and categorizing the data. However, researchers conducted analysis, reviewing, and deeply engaging with the data in a recursive manner. 2 studies used stories or vignettes created from the raw data to analyze and interpret. Iterative processes associated with hermeneutic phenomenology were used. Each of the studies engaged Rogers' science of unitary human beings for interpretation of the findings. The phenomena of interest included experiences with non-invasive modalities like quilting, massage, and simple touch, and then a study on the meaning of ethical and professional issues when reflecting on age and dying of incarcerated persons, and then understanding experiences of healing and well-becoming. The major findings. Smith and Reed found 3 major themes of experiences in their study about the use of massage and simple touch. The 3 themes of interest were sensing, reflecting, and connecting. The overarching theme was titled, quote, "Touch as Sanctuary," close quote. In terms of the science of unitary human beings interpretation, the themes were linked with Rogers' concepts of wholeness, awareness, and presence. The practice theory proposed based within the theoretically interpreted data is unitary theory of healing through touch. The science of unitary human beings interpretation of meaning regarding ethical and professional issues associated with aging and dying of incarcerated persons focused on human environmental field mutual process and the principles of homeodynamics. The researcher found the essays could be described as having a sense of wholeness and relating to nursing's purpose of human betterment and well-becoming. The knowing that emerged from the essays was seen as a support for the Rogerian ethical stance of knowing participation. I believe somewhere along the line I mentioned this, but you might have been struck by the human becoming hermeneutics and saying, okay, what's going on there? But this study involved 2 researchers, one presenting the perspective of Parsi's human becoming science, and the other researcher addressed these Rogers science. And so the Rogers science interpretation is the only one that is presented to you today. Qualitative major findings continued here. Now, Charbonnet-Deline created a story vignette for the theoretic statement, which is a final step in the unitary field pattern portrait method, concluding that, quote, pattern unfolding and dynamic change were seen, and a healing journey was confirmed by the depressed daughter and the mother who supported her. The researcher found the key Rogerian science concept of human environmental energy field mutual processes and change, as described by the homeodynamic principles, to be essential to the healing journey. Willis and colleagues' findings included 3 themes: moving beyond suffering, desiring release, and dwelling in suffering. These themes were interpreted within Rogers' science as manifestations of helicy, resonancy, and integrality, and well-being. The themes emerged as the 3 main concepts in the situation-specific theory moving toward well-being. Today we would say well-becoming. Each concept was further described by the features of each of those dimensions, and the authors presented a conceptual, theoretical, and empirical structure for the theory of moving beyond dwelling in suffering. The qualitative findings in the mixed method study were arrived at after analysis conducted using in vivo application. The researcher reported participant exemplars, exact quotes, and impressions. Interpretations included the science of unitary human beings, theoretical context, and report findings of 3 concepts, specifically awareness, pattern change, and self-discovery. The researcher concluded that both qualitative and quantitative data sources indicated positive pattern changes in perceived stress and anxiety. When using a home-based distant Reiki, the researcher concluded that distant healing modalities like distant Reiki that enhance awareness, reflection, and self-discovery may provide meaningful change in the healing journey. So, Rogers acknowledged that it is, quote, through basic and applied research, theories are tested, new understandings emerge, and new frontiers arise. Research and theory development is important and serious work. I was encouraged by a point that Butcher made in an article in his Nursing Science Quarterly article that just came out in October, and he suggested, quote, to ask a research question takes humility. So I'm grateful to the researchers who conducted Rogerian-based studies, and to nurse scientists and theorists for embracing their curiosity, their wonder, and decided to wander so we might learn something about unitary human beings and enhance our approaches toward well-becoming and human betterment. The studies reviewed today identified Rogers' science of unitary human beings as the theoretical frame for their studies, or interpreted their qualitative findings. All were discoverable in Sinol and Medline Complete. They were all identified as research articles published within the time frame that was designated, and all articles were data-based. The wandering journey was to learn about the characteristics reported in the literature during that time, that window. Others have engaged in this type of exploration before. I will focus just on 2 reviews that focus specifically on Rogers' science research. Dijkman, Lukisa from 1992, and Tae-Soo Kim's in 2008. To begin discussion, let's examine the findings of the review with theirs to glean some sense of change. Rogers acknowledged, I'm sorry, I have 2 pages here. So others have engaged in this type of exploration, and again, it is just those 2 reviews that I'm going to relate to. As you can see, this slide outlines some data on the 3 reviews that can help us explore preliminary differences or pattern changes. The notable variation include the number of studies in each and the time frame covered in the reviews. Although comparisons may not be warranted on the particulars, I think we can still perhaps see some patterns for our consideration. All 3 were interested specifically in the science of unitary human beings, and all 3 excluded dissertations. Some differences in the inclusion criteria are worth mentioning. For example, in the 1992 review, these are the articles that were selected were based on the three homeodynamic principles: resonancy, helicy, and integrality. Kim's review in 2008 did not specify if theories derived within the science were included, but based on the results, it would appear that studies integrating more than one theory may have been included at least once. The current review was a bit more narrow in terms of including only studies identifying the science as the explicit theoretic rationale. This would make a difference in the number of studies, clearly. If we just look at the number of studies and try to arrive at an average of publications per year, we'd see that based on this limited number of reviews, the period 2004 to 2007 had more studies published, on an average just about 8 per year. So this may be disheartening, because in the 2010, if you look at those studies, it would really be less than 1 per year. But again, remember that these are different patterns. It was a different time frame, and also there is the historical context to consider. And we, began talking about some of the history earlier in our time together. But think back about that. So, for example, Explorations was published in 1986, and the 1990 Barrett edited book, Visions, both compiling theoretical and research articles. And in the 1990 book, Rogers published the 1990 update. And, that was one thing with the Dyckman and Lukisa review. They really just wanted to look at studies that used the new update with the 3 homeodynamic principles versus earlier on, some were using 4. Also, Rogerian Nursing Science started publishing in 1988 and disseminated theoretical and research works at that time. Nursing Science Quarterly began publishing, and the focus was on the science and its emerging concepts, theories, and instruments. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Visions was publishing for several years. The SRS conferences were beginning to resume. Dissemination of the science of unitary human being instruments was increasing, and Rogerian theories were taking hold in the Rogerian science community. In the late 90s to mid 2000s, more academic journals were publishing, and grants were increasing in nursing. In 1997, the last book focused on the science was edited by Madrid. The only new book exclusively addressing the science of unitary human beings is the 2023 publication of John's works. In the 2010s and into the 2020s, some nurse scientists and nurse educators were less interested in theory. Probably it started a little earlier than that, but this is not intended to be an in-depth or completely on target, historical review, just some points to consider. Funding sources and some of the publications were less interested in Rogers science or really even theoretical articles. More recently, with the activities of nurse scholars like Parsi, Fawcett, Jones, Smith, and Chin, and others have helped to advance nursing theory in the nursing community. You all have made other ideas about the changing time. You all may have other ideas about the changing times and the situations and progress that may have been influenced or changed by them, with them, I should say. And so all of this contributes to the changing patterns that we see in nursing education, research, and publication. So if you'd like to share some of that, we can get into that certainly at the dialogue. But for right now, I'd like to move on to the study design pattern changes over the 3 reviews. So keep that in mind now. Be thinking about that. As we can see, methods become more diverse over the years. In the Dykman-Lucchese review, there were no qualitative studies, and the focus was on the specific Rogerian principles, as I mentioned before. No science of unitary human being derived methods were used. In terms of 2008 and Kim identified an array of methods, including the use of two methods derived within the science: Cowling's unitary appreciative case study and Carboni's mutual exploration of the healing human field, environmental field relationship instrument. In the current review, there are a variety of methods as well, with one method derived within the science, and there was then the addition of that science method. Obviously, we've already talked about, is the unitary field pattern portrait method for that Butcher shared with us. But the other new addition there is the mixed method design. Now, the previous ones reviews did not speak specifically to whether or not there were any pilot or feasibility studies included, but since they were in the most recent material, share that. Another point is that in today's review, two of the studies cited use of technological applications for specifically qualitative work, specifically Atlas, TI, and NVivo. In the current review, there was one science-based method which were engaged, and I already mentioned that. Two studies were identified as pilot of feasibility. Got ahead of myself there. So let's take a look at the instruments. This is another interesting comparison. So the instruments documented in the three reviews also show a range of instruments. In the 80s and 90s, new tools derived within the science of unitary human beings were being developed. Awareness and accessibility, sorry about that. We're close to an airport as well as multiple military bases. So awareness and accessibility may have been higher in the studies reviewed in 2008. In the few quantitative studies reviewed for today, only two Rogerian science-derived instruments were used. In the current review, only two studies included statements regarding linkages or congruence with the theoretical frame. Kim found none of the studies using non-science of unitary human being instruments included rationale for the selection or its congruence with the science. This does impact conceptual clarity and consistent congruence with the stated theoretic rationale. Dykman and Lucchese found issues with this as well. As many of you may be aware, there are at least two efforts to catalog or identify the existing Rogerian science measurement tools. Completion of those two projects may take time, but they may assist in facilitating the use and updating and revising of previously developed tools. This and more extensive congruent use of instruments derived in the science is an important work. So if this is an interest or passion that you might have, I think Violet Melansky and Jackie Fawcett may be very interested in speaking with you. In addition, it is important to note in today's environment, published research would be expected to address reliability and validity, the psychometric estimates of the instruments used, which wasn't consistently the case. Certainly in the previous studies, it was much better in the current review. In the Dykman-Lucchese review, they found that all authors, quote unquote, faithfully followed Rogers' conceptual framework. They did provide an explanation that noted hypothesis testing in the studies in their review are not hypothesized in terms of causality, but rather as an existing relationship. This was very evident in the titles and descriptions of the studies. Dykman and Lucchese did state a reservation regarding methods and measurements in the studies, suggesting that non-science of unitary human being measures may not have been measuring the science constructs that were really under study. And so that may have accounted for unsupported hypotheses. Kim identified concerns with the extent of unitary perspective and conceptual congruency in the studies reviewed. Again, the issue of causality arose as Kim identified causal language, such as the effect of and the impact of, were noted as incongruent. She suggested terms like related to or could be inferred from as more reflective of the acausal relationships. Kim also identified the term quote unquote intervention was not placed within the context of the science of unitary human beings, suggesting inconsistencies with conceptual congruence. Some of these same issues are seen in the current review. Some of the studies discussed today use the term intervention at times and patterning modalities at others, but not consistently. In the current review, in terms of the qualitative studies, the interpretation using Rogers science and presentation of findings carried through the perspective worldview to completion. For the quantitative studies, though, the consistent flow of theoretical rationale was only observed in one out of 4 quantitative studies. The other 3 identified the science as underlying the study, but did not carry it through in a consistent manner. As we can appreciate, Kim cautioned that the unitary perspective and conceptual congruency is expected, including the interpretation of findings. So to be clear, in any review, there may be missed studies, and the narrow focus of the review today provided for only a small number of studies exclusively focused in the science of unitary human beings. I'm reminded of the concern of the Dykman-Lukisa review that one of the weaknesses they found was a paucity of detail regarding the significance and implications for nursing practice. In today's review, we all were really related to changes in patterning manifestations and discussed the patterning modalities and patterning manifestations in terms of nursing practice. The Rogerian concepts observed most often were associated with human environmental field mutual process, and the examples of the homeodynamic principles in nurses' processes with people. We learned that researchers found non-invasive modalities useful in patterning for change, healing, and well-being. For example, the use of Reiki, guided imagery, and music can change patterns and experiences of pain, depression, stress, and anxiety. While some may have been small studies, they did build on literature supporting similar findings. Further, the use of yoga and a patterning modality can enhance manifestations such as optimism, power, and well-becoming. We found that we can find meaning and ways of healing for unitary human beings through listening and appreciating expressions, perceptions, and experiences in situations where nurses can fulfill their purpose toward human betterment and well-becoming. 2 new practice situation-specific theories are available for use and testing. We also learned that there is a flow in nursing sciencing. Changes in knowledge development and the human environment field mutual process can be related to research and the knowledge development moving forward. I hope we also learn that we all need to appreciate each other in all our patterns of contributions and appreciate our nurse scientists, educators, practitioners, theorists for taking the time to wonder and wander. So thanks for taking a risk and being humble. In terms of recommendations, the current review and comments from previous authors suggest that a balance of basic applied research will be useful to the advancement of the science and its derived theories. Rogers expected and encouraged change, updates, revising for better understanding while preserving meaning, emerging theories, and the use of science for human betterment. Using and development of research methods specific to Rogers science is ongoing. In terms of measurement, expanding the use of the science of unitary human being tools and measures is needed and important work. Some instruments may not have been used for some time now and may need revisions and updating, or at the very minimum, retesting. These would be useful research projects. When a non-science of unitary human beings instrument is used, the rationale for selection and a conceptualization of its congruence with the science would be expected. This also relates to the next bullet point there regarding application of the research tradition. We should encourage each other, our colleagues, our friends, our students, and any author that we may review either formally or informally for. Encourage them to include the reliability and validity information for the instruments, provide conceptual clarity in both quantitative and qualitative works, and then in qualitative works to address trustworthiness. That was addressed in several of our qualitative studies. This sounds like a simple thing, but sometimes we get focused on a certain thing and don't really see the forest for the tree, if you will. We also need to find and share ways to support our work through learning communities, seeking assistance from others, and finding funding. In terms of support, the SRS continues to hold dialogues, and Marlene invited us all, hopefully for November. And these can be invaluable ways to connect with other researchers or clinicians and to discuss projects and learn from each other. The conference obviously helps to stimulate our wonder and gets us asking questions and wandering. The new book is indeed a gift and can support us in our journey to enhance our understanding of the science. And of course, there is the issue of funding. So this is to remind you all that we are the Martha E. Rogers, Society of Rogerian Scholars, Martha E. Rogers Scholars Fund, Inc. Is a 501c3 organization that accepts donations, which go specifically to the activities for funding research projects or other projects. So we have now 2 grants. The Martha E. Rogers grant was previously the Martha E. Rogers Scholarship. We did revise that because we thought that perhaps it was keeping some people from making an application because all nurses and all members of the society are eligible. And it's not just about research, it can be regarding planning projects for clinical practice, policy projects, and things of that nature. So it is open to all nurses. We seek members planning projects based within the science that may be doing research, clinical projects, policy projects in all areas of nursing to apply. As you can see, the Martha E. Rogers grant is the next one that will be coming up, which is due on April 1st. And the grant packet is on the Society of Rogerian Scholar website. Funding is up to $2,000, and we will fund up to 2 proposals annually. And so inquiries can be sent to Dr. Molansky. But again, the packets are full. They do a lot of explanation, so please do take a look at that. And then our second grant opportunity is the Elizabeth Ann Manhart Barrett grant, which is our newest grant. Again, it is an annual offering and needs to be submitted by September 1st. Again, funding is up to $2,000, and we will fund up to 2 projects annually. And again, the packet is on the website, and Dr. Molansky can take your inquiries. So again, this is to support your projects. If you are specifically doing a project related to Elizabeth's power theory, this would be the appropriate grant. The Martha E. Rogers is the science of unitary human beings and other theories within the science. So that is a little broader. I also wanted to say that the Martha E. Rogers Scholars Fund looks forward to receiving your submissions as we get closer to the 2024 grant applications. And further, that I mentioned when I started to talk about these two grants that we invite your donations to specifically the fund. The Martha E. Rogers grant comes from our general fund. And then when we developed the Elizabeth Ann Manhart Barrett grant, we did wish to have people designate if they wanted to contribute to money supporting that grant, to specifically write that in their check or in their communication. Of course, Tina Rankins is our treasurer in the fund. So with that, it's now time for your comments and dialogue. So please share your observations about the science, research, ways we can enhance the specific methods and measures, and how we can encourage researchers in their work, or whatever you wish. It's open.
Thank you, Arlene. That was amazing and so interesting to see the analysis across those, those years. Differences. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was wondering, I guess, as I was looking at it, of course, I was concerned with the last 10 years and only 9 studies. I wondered about the lack of mentors. Many mentors perhaps leaving their academic positions and not having a plan, a succession plan, if you will, to help other mentors grow.
Yeah, I think that's a definite consideration from the historical perspective in terms of education and the support idea that was in there, is really thinking about that.
Arlene, I'm sorry, Marlene.
I'm done. Thanks, Violet.
Could you stop sharing screen? I can't see how to raise your hand.
Oh, I think Lisa might have taken it down for me, right?
Oh, I'll raise my hand this way.
Okay, great.
This is really quite something, the work that you have done and put into this. It's quite impressive. And I just kept thinking, so many of the things you raised are dovetailing beautifully with the second project that the Resource Development Committee is taking on. Because what we have recognized is that the tools that exist, so many of them, nobody can find. And for so many of them, the people who develop them are no longer physically present with us. So our undertaking, which eventually, hopefully, will evolve into another book. But what we have to do first is locate these tools. We probably have to reproduce scoring guides because, for example, the human field image scale, I've gotten permission from Linda's daughter. I'm sorry?
Johnson, right? That's the Johnson tool.
Linda Johnston. Yeah, and I've gotten permission from her daughter, who sent me her dissertation. The tool is in there, but the scoring guide isn't. We've been in contact with Helen Farren. Patty Bartsack was able to communicate with her. We are trying. I've been in communication with Sarah Geldner's family, because Sarah is responsible for working on 3 tools. So Judith Carboni with her qualitative method, who knows where Judith Carboni is? So the biggest undertaking that we're starting with is trying to locate people. Our committee currently exists of 10 people. Anybody who wants to join us, please do. Our ultimate goal is a 3-part book. One part would be the tools that are clearly derived from the science of unitary human beings. The second part would be the tools that are derived from the science, but also simultaneously using some other theory. And then the third part would be the research methods developed for the science. And, you know, based on your presentation, that would be a wonderful contribution because people want to do a Rogerian study. How do they access these tools?
Right.
Where are they? Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just say, I hope I can start a watershed today because I'd like to join you in your work.
Wonderful. Very good. You're on the list.
Okay. Let's see. I think Jackie has a question or a comment, I hope.
Well, thank you, Arlene. It was absolutely a magnificent presentation.
Thank you.
A couple of questions, actually. One is that the lack of reliability and validity reported in articles is our fault collectively. As peer reviewers, we must insist. If we happen to be editors of journals, we must further insist. But as peer reviewers, we have to say for anything that you're doing for any journal that has any kind of instrumentation, have to give reliability and validity. You should give it originally, like the original reliability and validity, and then for the population or sample that you're using for your study. The other comment is that I have to say I was rather surprised to see as many quantitative studies. That especially the experimental and quasi-experimental studies, because at least a long time ago, we had multiple discussions about research designs that are congruent with the science of unitary human beings. And there was a fair amount of consensus, I thought, at the time, that experimental studies weren't appropriate, because no matter what you say, they're not causal, they are causality. And I think we had settled on the best way you could do a quantitative study would be through correlational research, where you're not proposing any kind of causality. So I was sort of surprised about that. And I think as you publish this paper from your presentation today, of course I certainly assume you will, you might want to add that as a comment.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you again. It was just
you.
Magnificent presentation.
Thank you. Let's see. I don't know if I can see everyone's screen. Other comments, observations? Oh, I see Barbara. Do you have a question or a comment, Barbara? Okay.
Thank you. I was just
And there's a cat going along the screen.
John, what do you think about all of this?
I just want to ask a question.
yeah.
I know that you
You're
mentioned
muted, John. So I'm sorry, Patty. John was trying to speak, but he's muted.
I'm unmuted,
Yes, there you go.
but I'm mute.
Never.
I don't know, Jackie. Sometimes I think it's the way you present what you're doing and how you have framed it as to whether you can or cannot use what you call has been cause and effect. Because you are looking at things that are in mutual process, and the data has been spouted out that should be reflective of that process. You're just looking at how one thing is related to something else. But the old traditional view is it's cause and effect. And I think Martha would not always agree with that. Because I think she has written that any method is okay.
Yes.
Uh,
Mhm. And also, the first earlier reviewers did comment on that as well. And in several of the studies, including even the recent one, the authors certainly made I won't say every, but made attempts to be sure they explain. Well, they really tried to put the pattern manifestations under study within a Rogerian frame and try to explain it in that way. But unfortunately, in the current study, a number of the quantitative studies really just mentioned science of unitary human beings in the theoretic rationale and then did not carry it through. So it gets hard to be able to see the kinds of information that John is mentioning. We do have
Something that just came up or came to mind is that a very long time ago, I think shortly after I finished my doctorate, that I was taking a course in regression at the University of Connecticut because I couldn't let go of being a student, I guess. And I worked very hard to frame what we would think of as effect of kinds of questions into relationships. And like, what is the relationship between like Reiki treatments and whatever the effect was. And then one of the statistical techniques that comes to mind is you could use logistic regression so that you're still into a correlational type of mode. So it may be something that we want to think about a little bit more or a lot more in terms of advising people and as the resource group are working on research methods, we might want to have a comment about something like that.
We have 3 other hands up that I can see. Shirley, did you want to share something?
I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, because it is so interesting when you can look at a long range of things and kind of begin to summarize it. It gives you such a good viewpoint. And I wanted to just highlight the work that has been done with John's book and the things that Violet's working on. I'm no longer technically a student, but I can tell you as a student, you guys have been living this for 50 plus years. And when you come into it new, there's a lot of data that, you're trying to compile in your head and understand where the science has moved. And so these summary works like John's book and what Violet is talking about are just going to be invaluable for students to be able to access the information and move it forward.
Yes, thank you. Nancy, did you want to share?
So thank you for a wonderful presentation. I learn so much every time, at these conferences. So I appreciate your brain and your heart. So I want to, and this is going to probably sound way out there, but I want to ask about how the tools for patterning manifestations can lead to outcome measurements for third-party reimbursement. How do we bring it down to the practice level to show that we are impacting the well-becoming of persons, families, and communities?
I'm sorry. I don't think I have the answer to that, but I do want to make one note. There was one of the studies, the Burn study from 2006, exploring Reiki in pain in individuals postoperatively. And while they had, a small study and, all the information we might have expected were not in the report, what was also interesting there is that they reached out to their health community and everyone was so interested and was impressed actually by patients' change in pain. And so much so that the hospital actually started a program to train nurses on Reiki so that they could provide that for patients who may choose to do that for pain. And that included the medical community as well as nursing and administration. So, while it's not a specific answer to you, I think that our inclusion of a variety of constituencies, if you will, and making a real effort to show, what is possible, really can make a difference even in that.
Well, I think that,
Others have something to say about that.
well, I think bringing it down to the practice level, even in the form of demonstration projects, for
Mhm.
nurses understanding that, yes, the science absolutely, and also the theories of nursing that have emerged from the science do lead practice. And then, even in the nurses doing this at the bedside and starting to show outcomes and keeping data like that, that also helps us, I think, with future funding, if we're going to do it on a larger scale. But anyway, yeah, that's, I just wanted us to kind of get it
Yeah,
down.
we need to think about
point,
that, I guess.
Get it down to that area.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, when it comes to nursing practice. Dot, you've been waiting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Arlene. And I just want to echo from the chat and also from people who have shared. I have hope for nursing theory from your presentation. It gives me hope that we have always annually at our meetings, at our conferences, have claimed that there's no theory in nursing education type things. But I think this really will show, your article, when you publish it, will really show that we've been working, as Shirley said, for 50 plus years on developing the science of unitary human beings. And God bless John for carrying Martha Rogers' torch for talking about the linguistics of Rogerian science and making it meaningful as well as understanding. So I thank you, Arlene, for your presentation, for getting us through the homeodynamics, through the principles, through integral and helice and resonance. And I really am excited once again. I've had, for full disclosure, for the last couple of years, I've been having some mental health issues that I've been working on, and I've downloaded myself to doing things that I enjoy and moving into retirement and all the life changes that I have. So I've been dealing with my own patterning manifestations, and I just so was in awe of your presentation, Arlene. So from my heart to yours, I thank you.
Thank you very much. And those modalities are available to all of us. And I forget which article it was of John's. He talks about how we can use some of those non-invasive modalities for ourselves, like meditation and visualization and those sorts of things to help us, understand ourselves even better. So thank you. Patty?
Thanks, Arlene, for really a great and illuminating presentation. And just responding maybe a little bit to some of the ideas that Nancy had. I just wanted to say that, I still work as a staff nurse, and just mentioning sort of two experiences. When I worked at the Brigham in Boston for 100 years, they did have Reiki classes, and nurses got protected time for that, meaning that, you would come in on a time, you'd be paid for it, that wasn't part of your shift. And we took a few classes, and then in EPIC, we were able to enter, nurses don't enter orders, we were able to enter a consult for Reiki, which we would name ourselves, and it didn't need to be co-signed or have 100 signatures after it. And then, based on our assignment for the day, if we had someone that we thought might be open to that, we could bring it up. I distinctly remember a patient that I always remember the rooms. You always remember the rooms. You never remember everything else. And gentleman happened to have 8 surgical drains hanging out of them. And because I remember we had to number them in Epic, and he was open to that. And, of course, we weren't doing studies or anything, but he looked very relaxed and very accepting of that. Regarding bringing that into the staff nurse level, so that we can develop those bedside questions and bring tools to the bedside that may then become operationalized, that in the future could produce funding or something like that. You really need to have that culture of research at that level. I work now at a different hospital in Massachusetts. I work over at Leahy in Burlington, also a level 1 trauma center as a staff nurse. And I just finished my own study through the IRB, which was 1.5 years long. And I built a movie that I created myself that was built upon a lot of the precepts of Martha Rogers, but it was not entirely Martha Rogers. So it was kind of a built on the shoulders of, and then I was able to send this to 100 nurses at Leahy, do a pre-test and a post-test, meaning, what do you think about empathic nursing? Here's a 6-minute movie. That was the intervention. And has this changed your practice? And I'm actually presenting on this at my hospital next Tuesday. So I think as we build shared governance and we start to really build that culture of nursing, some of the work we're doing in this society, getting tools together and that kind of thing, now can funnel into the hands of folks that can really do this research, operationalize it, and fund it.
Thank you, Patty. Okay, John.
I'd like to throw out an idea that I've already published, is what can we do to bring a new view of how to do research? In many instances, it's either objective or subjective, qualitative or the other. What I am trying to suggest is you wed objective / subjective, and it becomes one phenomenon, and create an idea of what it means, objective, subjective, and then create a method to test that process.
Oh, hang on. I think Winona, I don't know.
I just wanted to say something to John. I think, John, that what you're suggesting is what is tends to be called mixed method research, but what you're suggesting is moving beyond the traditional view of mixed methods. But that would be a start to look at that and then go with your idea of more of how to meld it. So
It would no longer be mixed method. It would be one method.
Right. Precisely.
Winona?
Hi, I'm Wyona, Houston, Texas. Just joined the society, and I hope I'm on the email list and the journal list. As of 1 year ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And as of this month, I am in remission. I have no more tumors. They took out 10. But what I want to say is, in terms of research, I think John said it well in his book. John, I loved your book. You can totally converted me. I've had a paradigm change. I get it. And I may not be able to talk the language completely yet, but I'm there. And I'm halfway through Martha Rogers' 1970 book as well. What I want to say in terms of research, I think that the word choice, John used the choice. It's a choice of an individual. And how can some X thing help motivate an individual to embrace Reiki or to embrace some sort of a intervention? Because I think choice is really important. I mean, I realized that myself going through this journey was, choosing to be positive, choosing to help others, choosing to try mindfulness, choosing these things. And certainly, if I was a grumpy old man, I go, it's all hogwash. I'm not going to do any of that stuff, And so I think that Sean's right. I think we can move to a different level here of the objective, subjective. I think objective might be better in that, and somehow using this word of choice as we develop our research studies more so than using our current terminology. So that's what I wanted to chat about.
Thank you, Winona. Go ahead, Violet.
I don't want to speak for her, but I think that Shirley Conrad is going to be leading us on this journey tomorrow in many ways. She will be speaking tomorrow as the recipient of one of the MER. I believe at the time it was a scholarship rather than a grant, but anyway. And she's got a whole hour to talk with us about some very exciting things that she did in her dissertation research. And there was something else that I wanted to say, but of course it went right out of my head. Maybe I'll remember it, maybe not. Okay.
That's good. You have time. Okay, Marlene.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of respond to what Nancy and Patty were talking about as far as our focus on practice, theory-guided practice, and how do we take Rogerian nursing science and really highlight what we're seeing in practice, in bringing it to light to others. So I just want to kind of put a plug in for getting some of these things like Patty, what you were talking about, getting that published, or else writing a blog. A blog is a way to begin, and we have blogs on Nursology that, are 4,000 people are seeing. So taking some time to just reflect on practice and having Rogerian nursing science guiding practice in some way, providing a story or an example of that in a blog, I think is really important, because we have very little of this in out there, and focused on practice out there for practicing nurses, as Patty said.
And it's important to emphasize, thank you very much, Marlene, for mentioning nursology.net. For people to keep in mind, you can write a blog, and that doesn't preclude writing an article. So in fact, you can do it either way. You can write an article and then do a blog about the article, but you can write a blog and then do an article after that. So don't think that doing a blog on nursology.net will limit you in other publication forms.
Violet?
Yeah,
you remember?
7-second delay. I remembered. I
Great.
wanted to tell Wyona that what she was talking about was the power theory. She's living her power, and precisely what you were talking about. Congratulations.
Yes. Any other points? Or yes, Violet.
Something else. I saw Donna Perry. Where is Donna Perry? Well, Donna is here somewhere. She may be on another screen. Donna, would you like to talk a little bit about the coming article? Because that comes from Donna, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here. I had to unmute. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. So Violet and Dottie and I, along with Pam Grace and a bunch of my students, wrote an article that hopefully will be coming out in Nursing Inquiry soon, probably within the next month or two. And it talks about the use of Barrett's theory in a policy course that I took. And actually it came about from this conference because I was asked to teach the health policy course in our PhD program because the person who taught it was retiring. And I was thinking about that as I was listening to the presentations 2 years ago. And it was the year that that the program was dedicated to Anne Marie Barrett. And so I was really inspired by her idea of power as freedom versus power as control. And I thought it was such an important notion to include in policy, particularly in our contemporary environment with the polarization that we're facing. So basically, I took the syllabus we had, which really was a very traditional health policy course, and just reframed it using Barrett's theory. So the course still contains a lot of traditional material around health policy that you would find, but there's an introductory 4-week module that's framed more from the perspective of power as freedom versus power as control. And so anyways, we wrote an article about that, and it includes some excerpts from the students in which narratives in which they talk about how that idea influenced the way they think about policy. So, and thank you, Violet and Dottie, for all your help, because it was, it's one thing to have an idea, but you brought all your knowledge to bear on that process, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
And you managed it. You brought it to fruition. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Shirley, your hand is up.
Yes. I wanted to comment on Donna's pending article. Is there a way that the organization has to alert members when articles like that come out? Because, it sounds wonderful. I can't wait to read it, but I might not normally see that.
Oh, good point.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dottie?
So I don't want to say a lot because some of these things that we're talking about, I'll be talking about a bit tomorrow, but I do think fundamental to a lot of this is the cohort that you bring together to create a team to make these changes. And there are, different ways and different strategies to do that. But I think there's a mentoring core, no matter what we do into education, if we're in a practice environment, if we're in, classroom teaching and situational policy issues, there is the need. Yes, you can do it by yourself, but I do find the collective very effective in these really big changes, especially structural changes within academia, structural changes within a practice environment, which I think is monumental sometimes. Yes, you can make small change, but I think along with that, the people who are making changes have also related to larger groups of people. And I look at work that we've done over the years in different environments, and one person may start the dialogue, but it takes a village. And I think that's how you stimulate that. And making the dialogue and the discussion relevant and meaningful to people in their work, especially right now, during transition times when there's a lot of conflict on the units and, challenges in the classroom, et cetera. I do think that is a powerful influence. And, the work that's going on with the students, I think, is very powerful because it sends them out with a different message and a different understanding. And I think that the more exemplars that people can have, that they can relate to situations, really helps to bring other people along. A lot of people might not have even been exposed to some of this thinking. A lot of the ideas around development of ideas related to theory that are meaningful and people can relate to, they may not have even been exposed to. And so I think it's a very conscious thing that we have to continue in order to move this along. The work is powerful and the outcomes are even more powerful. And all of us who've been engaged in this, I think, recognize that. And the question is strategies to move out. And as I listened to Arlene, thank you so much for that presentation. You realize the volume and what could be. And I think you try to negotiate how that can be.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Maybe Nurseology and SRS could occasionally publish on their website new articles that are of interest to science and unitary human beings. Not publish them, but the titles and so
Yeah.
forth.
Mhm. It's an option, yes. Mhm.
And we can do that as long as we have the information.
Right. Mhm. And I like that idea also, of the blog, like, so if someone is going to be releasing an article, they can still blog about it, and that way people will be aware that it's coming forward. Mhm. It's kind of like the book release, John.
Very much so.
Barbara, did you want to say something?
I would, hold on.
Oh, you're muted, Barbara.
Is that better?
There you go. Great.
Okay, I just, Arlene was my neighbor.
Mhm.
I had the advantage of having lots of time with Arlene over many years, and now she's deserted me for South Carolina. I even went there, but I wasn't able to see her when I went, but my family, we have some family down there now, but I'm not traveling anymore, and so she has to come back up to see me in New Jersey. But I just, your presentation was incredible, the level of time and energy and creativity that you added to it. It was so meaningful and I'm not teaching and I haven't read John's book, but one of the thoughts that occurred to me is that I've had a lot of trouble with my tech skills. I'm in the library. I had a tech full-time specialist. When I moved from the teenage room to a conference room where the kids were not noisy, I lost you for about 5 minutes, but the tech guy is still here. So, and the library closes soon, so I'll be closing with everyone else. But I thought that John's interview was somehow, I had 3 things on my agenda that day, John, but I said, I told everybody else, I can't be with you. I have to go to this meeting. And my internet worked that day. And is that being public? Do we have access to that anywhere?
Yes, yeah.
It was recorded, right?
It's
It
on
was recorded, yeah.
YouTube channel. Yeah. Gosh, I don't even know. I think if you go to YouTube and you search,
But where can that be real? Like we're talking about accessibility.
So
Yeah.
I put it in the chat, but I'll put it again right now.
oh, good,
It's
good.
the link to John's YouTube and to the
Right.
book launch. I'll put it in again.
Shouldn't it be in some, I mean, I don't know who's gonna find it in YouTube other than, I mean, if we look it up, but is there any way to, Marlene?
You click on that link, it'll take you there.
No, I don't need it. I was there. I can
Well,
do it. And
it-
then, of course,
Get
Peggy's,
that with
the
any-
quality of that presentation was just incredible. And then to have someone respond beside who wasn't a Rogerian was even better. But what we were talking about, new articles being available, how can we make sure that every nurse who has an interest in the science of unitary human beings is going to see John's interview somewhere? Is that possible?
We can post it on nurseology.net.
It's not there yet, right?
Mhm.
And what about our tool,
There.
SRS's website?
Certainly.
Do we have, is,
Great idea. I don't think we put it on the website, but we could definitely put that. Yeah, put
because
the,
we don't have a lot of things to put up, but things that are, I mean, and that's just such, the forum was a very common public forum, and I just think it could be, just like his newspaper picked up the story about him. That we could send it to the New York Times or someplace like that too. But thank you, thanks everyone. My activities are very limited in academically, but and I am going to move to CCRC, but right here in New Jersey, just a few in Heightstown. It's 100-acre facility, which has been around since 1965. So It's gorgeous. And if anybody wants to come, I have a place for you. I have 2 bedrooms. I've room to have guests and meals. And so I welcome anyone who comes to Central Jersey. Remember, I live in the Princeton area, and but it's only an hour from New York. I do not go to NYU or New York anymore. I just don't feel at my age it's safe. So I'm sorry that that's part of what we're dealing with in our world today. But this is wonderful. If I don't get on tomorrow, I'm hoping to be on for Dottie. And I do have a job. I'm the president of the Golden Age Neighbors in Cranberry. After my husband died 2 years ago, they didn't have a president. Nobody wants leadership. I mean, fortunately, we're still able to get our leaders to work, but the mentorship, I know, is a real problem. And I'm finishing in 2 years because I just can't handle the vision and the technology. And tomorrow, in the middle of Jackie and I forget, I think it's Shirley, I'll be going to lunch because it's the monthly meeting and I'm the president. So, but I'll be back if my Zoom works. I'll be back for the annual meeting. But I hope that I'll get on for Dottie in the morning. But thanks, Arlene, for giving me
Thank
this
you. I'm
time.
glad you could
And-
come today, and we'll look forward to
Well,
seeing
we
you
miss
tomorrow,
you.
Barbara.
We
Thank
miss you in New Jersey, and our contacts with NYU, I guess, are really slim to none at this point, right?
Other comments?
Arlene?
Yes. Hi, Violet.
I just want to say 2 things. First of all, there's a whole bunch of people who have watched the YouTube, the book launch. And since we have been talking about this most beautiful book, I will simply mention that we have sold 2 of the signed books, and I will be in touch with the 2 people who emailed me. And just in general, you'll need to send a check for $50 to our treasurer, Mandy Coakley. I will give you the address. You will give me your address, and I will send the book to you. But I will be in touch with the 2 people who emailed me. Thank you.
Great. Other comments or questions?
I had an idea when we were talking about third-party payment. When that's an issue in nursing in general, except perhaps for nurse practitioners. I think that if we think about how much time we're spending and how that translates into cost for anything that we're doing in terms of patient care, and document that, and then look at what's happening to the patient, then we can start making a case for getting reimbursement. And I think that there are at least some articles in that journal called Nursing Economics that may have some ideas about how to do that. So, I mean, I don't think that it's hopeless. I think it's just complicated, and being able to put it in Epic or whatever the hospital, electronic record is a really huge first step to be able to do that. And the next step is to attach a cost to it. I mean, nursing is still generally paid for through room and board. So we have to go through that and then start parceling out what the various different things that we do, assessments and what we call assessments and interventions.
Yes, I know.
Arlene?
Yes, Barbara.
I just thought of something I wanted to capitalize on Donna Perry. And many people know that I spent 20 years in public office. And I just have to say all politics is local, and that I know that we're very busy as academicians and researchers and practitioners, but we do need nurses in public office. And the power information that we learned of power as freedom from Elizabeth, it just stands us so well in the way in which we lead in public office. So I certainly want to encourage, and if anybody, I still work in campaigns occasionally, and if anybody wants help with running for public office, I could still do that. I can't do research right now, but I would be happy to chat with anybody and hope that if not you, then your students, urge them to become active. We do a day at the State House. I have I have, my State Nurses Association is still doing that in New Jersey, and we get the students then to write about the experience and to recognize that we do need to be, you know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we need you to be at the table and have some nurses are very active in the policy level. So thanks for letting me add that.
Great.